with our next guest. I'm honored to be interviewing him and talking with him about kind of bringing together all that we've talked about today to discuss creating the beloved community. I believe that he does work in concerning practices and solutions that help us to create the beloved community. So it's an honor to interview Mr. Rashad Robinson, president of Color of Change. I'm going to bring him on now. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, good to be with you.
It's good to see you again. It was just yesterday, I think. Was it yesterday?
Yes, it was just
Feels like it was long ago. it must have been a long day.
Yes.
But I know your time with us is short today. But, you know, Mr. Robinson, you said to call you Rashad.
Yes.
I'll call you Rashad. When I examine and look at what you're doing with Color of Change, those are the two words that stick out to me: practices and solutions.
Yeah.
And what Color of Change does is you develop campaigns that end unjust practices concerning Black people, but you also help come up with solutions that move everyone forward, which I believe is a model for how to create the beloved community. If we look at injustices for groups and say, hey, let's end that. Let's end these practices and let's figure out ways for all of us to move forward. Can you talk about that concept for a moment and how you believe it helps to create the type of world we want to live in?
Absolutely. You know, I believe that when oppressed people win of all different sort of backgrounds, those victories are victories that power all of us forward, right? When feminists win victories for women, they just don't help little girls dream bigger dreams, but they allow little boys to be their best selves as well. And so the idea of us not being in a zero-sum game, but us actually thinking about what can be the solutions that are force multipliers to raise the floor on what's acceptable and push up the ceiling on what's possible. For all of us, that's how I think about the work that we do at Color of Change. And we do that through strategic campaigning, right? Because this is a day about love, but love is a verb. Love is about action, right? It's not just about something that you say, it's about what you do every single day. And so what we try to do is in moments of deep crisis, deep pain, deep optimism, deep pessimism, we try to give people something to do. And it all comes from our founding in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, when Black folks were literally on their roofs begging for the government to do something and left to die. And Katrina illustrated a lot of things that people already knew: geographic segregation, generational poverty, the impacts of what we've done to our planet. And like COVID and like so many of these other moments, right, it wasn't just those issues. It was that no one was nervous about disappointing our community. And so what we really work to do is not just mobilize our communities, but provide pathways and on-ramps from people of all races to be able to channel that outrage, that energy into something that is actionable. And that, right, that is the spirit of love. Love is not just benign. Love is not just stagnant. Love is about what we do every single day.
Love is. And I was thinking about that too, that Color of Change, and you with your work, you provide pathways and platforms. So when we say we need to be loved, there are organizations like Color of Change that say, hey, we have a way you can do that. And then the King Center has ways that people can be loved, but it's providing those avenues. We talk for a moment about Miss Gwen. I think that's was a seminal moment for me, for this elderly woman who,
76 years old,
76.
right?
Actually looks like my paternal grandmother. And think about her in prison, you know, no matter what happened, and to be sent back after being out for missing a call while she was trying to improve herself as a human being. I think love was Color of Change and people who signed on and other orgs stepping up to say we won't stand for this, and that helps to create the beloved community. Can you talk about Miss Gwen and what happened with her?
And I mean, she was taking a computer class and missed a call from her parole officer. I mean, we talk about reentry. We talk about folks being able to come back in society and find ways to engage themselves. You know, the United States has about 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarcerated population. We incarcerate for so many different things in this country, and so we use a carceral system as a way to punish and create punishments in ways that has nothing to do with our safety and has nothing to do with our justice. And so I believe in a world of restorative justice. I believe in a world of healing, but that actually means that we have to have public policy. I talk a lot when people talk to me about compassion and empathy, which I believe is so powerful at the individual level. But I think a lot about not just what does it mean to have compassion and empathy at an individual level, but what does it mean to have a society that is compassionate and empathetic? What does it mean to have a justice system, a healthcare system, an education system that has compassion and empathy baked into its core? And those are the things that we have to sort of channel our energy to demand. And so, yes, we made the demands to free Miss Gwynn of sort of any further time in a cage.
That's great.
But we also need to recognize that there's about 4,000 other folks just like her in similar situations, elderly folks that pose no risk whatsoever, who should be home right now. During the global pandemic, we watched as the COVID-19 ripped through prisons and jails into institutions that were never designed to provide any type of human rights or restoration, but were only designed to create sort of harsh treatment. But we watched as people were dying behind bars. We watched as the folks who were working there were bringing COVID back into their communities and into their families. And we recognize that we cannot incarcerate ourselves to a better society. And in fact, we are not producing safety and we are not producing justice. So I want to thank everyone who stood up for Miss Gwynn, but to say that as much as we want to win that victory, we need to also change the rules so that we're winning victories for the Miss Gwynns that we don't know, that we're making the system work better, that I said earlier, we are raising the floor on what's acceptable and we're pushing up the ceiling on what's possible.
Let's stay right there, because we're talking about creating a beloved community. And sometimes people don't believe it's tangible, that we can do it. But Mrs. Coretta Scott King, founder of the King Center, she talked about the beloved community being a realistic, achievable society where we have conflict, but we just resolve it without bitterness. And we don't have violence as a response to conflict. And she talked about transcending race and tribe and all these different things, as Dr. King did. But the three key things that you've mentioned here have been policies, practices, and solutions. And I believe all three are imperative to us creating that type of community that Dr. King and Mrs. King envisioned. And let's talk about that. How important is it for us to look at policies and say, you know, we can't just stand by and let policy stand. Love is changing policies as well.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the question, right, I think for all of us is how do we actually get there? And one of the frameworks that we really think about at Color of Change is not mistaking presence for power, right? Presence is visibility, awareness, retweets, shout outs from the stage. It's people knowing about the issue. Presence is a good thing. But when we mistake presence or the mere sort of visibility of something for actually it getting done, which is power, then we think we've done something that we haven't actually done, right? We might mistake a Black president, which is good, for thinking that we're post-racial. We might mistake the fact that America celebrates a lot of Black celebrities and Black cultural products for America loving Black people as much as America loving Black culture. And we know that America can love, celebrate, and monetize Black culture and hate
not love Black people
at the same time, right? Not actually be in relationship with us in the right way. And so I say all of that to say that as we think about the policies, the practices, and the solutions, the pathway to get there starts with each and every one of us. It starts with us engaging and pushing. You know, the forces that stand in the way of real change, that have always stood in the way of real change, that have benefited from the sort of, the genocide of Indigenous and Native folks, the servitude of Black folks, the subjugation of women, all of the ways in which communities have not been able to be fully seen and counted. Those forces will constantly exist, but I don't believe those forces can beat our unified, strategic, loving, forceful response.
Right.
And so the question,
Right.
the thing for all of us is that
Agreed.
we will always lose in the sort of back rooms of the conversation if all of us are not lined up at the front door. And so as we think again about love, we need to be lined up at the front door collectively to push and demand. We need to do it in unison. And I love the panel you had earlier with my API brothers and sisters, with a deep recognition that we have to be in solidarity across communities and recognize that our victories, if we build them correctly, can be force multipliers for more victories for all of us.
Yeah, the Color Change is doing something now with tech policy.
Yes.
That I think it's unique and it's very important, because it reminds me of a quote from Dr. King, where he said, if we don't have a spiritual and moral awakening, we'll destroy ourselves in the misuse of our own instruments. And what we're seeing with tech policy now and with technology is, if we're not careful, if we don't couple this heightened technology with an awakening, we'll destroy ourselves. Tell us about what Color Change is doing with technology, because I think that's important to understand. Technology can help us create the beloved community, or it can stand in our way of creating the beloved community.
That was such a word. And I so appreciate that, because the technology that has so much potential to bring us into the future can also drag us into the past. And the thing that we're really facing is that technology in and of itself is not built, to move us forward or drag us back, right? It is though controlled oftentimes by forces that are incentivized, right? So while TV in the 60s did so much work to channel images from the South to other parts of the country and other parts of the world about what was happening, it also is a place where so much disinformation and so much content which has spurred hatred against our community and others. And so we know any technology can sort of have its ups and downs, but what we're dealing with, the sort of space of the internet platforms, is something at a level and speed for which we have never really seen. The platforms, the Facebooks and Twitters and Googles of the world have gone before Congress and have actually argued that that they're not beholden to civil rights law. And so, the hard-won victories that so many folks contributed to, these platforms, this new technology, saying, hey, we don't actually have to abide by them. And they're using sort of weird loopholes to try to get there. And so we actually need our government. We actually need public policy to step in. We also need a new level of accountability. We can't actually get to real change without clear accountability. The platforms right now believe that they are immune to type of oversight, similar to police. And we have to right the balances of power, right the scales of power. And so part of what we're doing at Color and Change every single day is channeling the energy, aspirations, and fight of Black folks and allies of every race to both hold government accountable and hold these platforms accountable. In the process, put forward solutions that ensure that these platforms actually allow us to communicate while not actually put us in harm's way. These are huge public squares. I'll just end by saying Facebook has nearly 3 billion users. That is more followers than Christianity. Now, one single person should not control that type of platform without any type of accountability, without any type of oversight, and with total immunity. That is a design flaw, and that is a flaw that we have to fix. So we're not looking for charitable solutions to structural problems. We are looking for structural change, and structural change that will allow us to move things forward.
Wow, thank you for that. So we want to leave the people with something today, as we've talked about love all day, and we're going to follow this interview, this conversation, with a segment on nonviolence. But I just want to highlight what we've discussed, that we've talked about essentially infusing our practices, policy, solutions. And then you talked about accountability, which to me is about wisdom. and decisions, infusing all of that with love.
Yeah.
And what would these systems and structures look like if we do that? And if we figure that out, and if we start establishing coalitions or building better coalitions and building coalitions more, which is another powerful thing about Color of Change, how you join with other organizations to get the work done. If we do that, we can create this beloved community that we envision and that you and I both believe can become a reality. So can you just, as we close out this segment, share one thing that gives you hope that we can, with love, by being love, create the beloved community?
What gives me hope is this past summer, when many folks thought that the best we could do in terms of activism was clap outside of our windows or uplift investigative journalism, racial justice drove people to the streets of all races and all backgrounds to speak up, to stand up, and to push back against injustice collectively. And so many people joined us and other organizations in that fight. So I just want to welcome folks into the work, into the action of love, to join us at Color of Change or to join a local organization in your community, but to join the efforts to translate the presence and the visibility of this moment where more people are speaking up and standing up, but while we have more forces entrenched trying to stop that progress, to come together collectively to build a better tomorrow. So I want to invite people into the action because my hope always stems from the willingness of everyday people of all backgrounds to stand up and fight for the things that matter the most, to do it collectively together, and to build more power to make justice real in this country.
I believe that we can do that. Thank you so much. And the King Center is joining in that work as well. To be active, because love is active. Love implements the demands of justice. Love is strategic and powerful. And we talked about all of that today. And we're so grateful for you being with us to share as we close out our conversations and move into our nonviolent segment about the ways that we can create the beloved community. Thank you so much for being with us, Rashad.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome.